There's been a lot of really hard news over the last few days as the Trump regime grows increasingly desperate and thus escalates their illegal actions. They're absolutely trying to demoralize you and me. They're trying to make you despair and feel that they are big and strong and they're winning. They're trying to intimidate you into giving up and sitting down and backing off. It's that 1-2 punch of demoralization and intimidation. Authoritarians like Trump actually have a weak grasp on power, and they cannot handle direct challenges to that weak grasp by a mass resistance of the people. So the thing that they count on is scaring you shitless so that you will give up, because they know they're screwed if the people get together, stand up, join arm in arm, and resist. And when autocratic regimes realize that they're losing their grip on power, they're realizing that the people and the courts and institutions are resisting far harder than they thought they ever would, they get increasingly desperate and they escalate their tactics. Some people will say this is an extinction burst behavior. And I like to say this is what your toxic ex-boyfriend did when you thought about leaving him and he realized it. They try to squeeze harder. They try and intimidate more. They try to get you to give up resisting because they know that what you're doing is effective. And so we've seen not only awful things that this regime is doing, but we've seen more of that shock and awe. They want to flood the news with it so that your system gets overwhelmed with all of these bad things. And you believe that the only thing that is happening is that Trump and his minions are being successful in doing awful things. They want to create this portrayal that they're very, very successful, that they are sweeping in and they're just taking over and you shouldn't even bother resisting. That they're overwhelmingly powerful and that your side isn't doing anything, right? That's why it's so important for folks like Trump to try and control the media, try to suppress the resistance. It's, again, an intentional act to demoralize other people and to obscure the truth. And because we've seen so much of corporate media capitulate, they've settled lawsuits with Trump they easily would have won, getting rid of their DEI practices, platforming and sane-washing weirdo right-wingers on their panels, legitimizing fringe right-wing content, declining to cover protests, blackouts, and even court cases. And here's a big one for sure, no longer fact-checking what Trump and his regime says. Printing their quotes in the press as if they were factual when they're often riddled with inaccuracies or outright lies. Failing to do basic journalism. And because of that compromised position of much of corporate media, that lack of integrity, you may not be hearing about all of the good things that people around this country are doing, all of the ways that people are pushing back, and the rule of law is actually being upheld. Which is why I would argue it's so important that you follow independent journalists who are willing to tell you the truth and cover everything that needs to be covered. And that you would also kind of protect yourselves from folks that are choosing not to cover any of the positive news, but instead are really going heavy on the doomer content. I want to take a moment here and talk about some good news stories from the last few days. Some of these have been more obscured in social media and corporate media and the culture in general than others, but they're all equally important when it comes to defending democracy. The first one is that Democrat Sam Sutton just won an upstate New York state Senate race in a district that went plus 55 for Donald Trump in 2024. This is a seat that should have easily been won by the Republican. Let's add to that, last week, Omaha elected its first Black mayor, who happens to be a Democrat, who beat out a 3-term Republican. We are watching Democrats consistently win in special elections in places where the Republican was expected to win. That's a pretty resounding condemnation of Trump's first 100+ days in office. Today, a judge blocked the Trump administration from attempting to dismantle the Department of Education. Remember when I said that just because he puts forth an executive orders are not laws? Do not give him power he does not have. He can try and pull some illegal shit in an executive order, but overwhelmingly the courts are shutting him down. The judge blocked Trump from firing half of the Department of Education's workforce today. In another win for the rule of law, a federal judge yesterday said that the Trump regime violated his order when it put those immigrants on a plane to go to South Sudan. We're watching judges over and over again smack down the Department of Justice. They're not letting the illegal actions of the Department of Justice stand. They are absolutely doing everything that they can from their position behind the bench to uphold the rule of law. And that may not seem important because those 12 innocent men still got sent to South Sudan and they still need justice. But it's really important that we are seeing overwhelmingly the courts rule against the Trump regime, not by the bullshit of the DOJ, and fully exercise their power to defend democracy. Every time a judge says, I'm not giving in to your intimidation, I'm not willing to fold, I am going to do my job as a judge and uphold the law, that's a win for all of us. Speaking of, and this is one of my favorite stories from the past week, a federal district judge declared that the actions by the Department of Government Efficiency to take over the U.S. Institute of Peace were unlawful and had to be declared null and void. The employees at the Institute of Peace attempted to barricade the building and keep Doge out. They were really adamant that they were not going to go quietly. And they're all back at their jobs now, by the way. So get fucked, Elon Musk. Speaking of which, Elon Musk is still crying in his beer about how he tried to buy the Wisconsin Supreme Court race and he lost. He just threw away whatever it was, $12 or $20 million. And the voters were like, absolutely not, get fucked. And then he tried to meddle in German politics and they were like, no. And he realizes that just like how he poisoned Tesla's brand, that him inserting himself into politics is going to actually be a detriment to that candidate. He's going to poison that race for that candidate. He's going to motivate people to turn up just to vote against the guy that Elon Musk is trying to pay to get into office. So that's a big win for the American people. It's a big win for democracy everywhere, actually. Speaking of democratically elected officials who represent their constituents, Maryland Governor Wes Moore has signed more than 170 bills so far, including improving access to reproductive care. And while we're at it, a Montana courthouse just struck down a law that banned gender-affirming care. We saw Trump's DOJ have to drop those bogus charges against Newark Mayor Ras Baraka for that interaction he had at that ICE facility in New Jersey. Speaking of those bogus charges brought by U.S. Attorney and Trump's former personal lawyer, Alina Habba, a judge this week told her that her office must, quote, operate with a higher standard, and he criticized the hasty arrest and quick dismissal of trespass against Newark Mayor Baraka. On Wednesday, he granted what he called a, quote, embarrassing retraction of the charge. He told Alina Habba, your role is not to secure convictions at all costs, nor to satisfy public clamor, nor to advance political agendas. Your allegiance is to the impartial application of the law, to the pursuit of truth, and to the upholding of due process for all. Keep in mind, Alina Habba has charged sitting U.S. Democratic Representative LaMonica McIver with assault at the same event where she charged Mayor Baraka and then later had to drop the charges. I could talk about this more in a later video, but I watched the body cam footage. There is no way those charges are going to hold in front of a jury. And I think Alina Habba knows that. That was entirely political. It's about intimidating sitting members of Congress. It was great to read about her getting dressed down by that judge. Speaking of ICE just had to release Fabian Schmidt, a New Hampshire green card holder they had kept in detention for 2 months. ICE had to release Mosa Madawi from U.S. detention, and he was just able to graduate from Columbia. Every victory for the rule of law, every time justice is upheld, we've got to acknowledge it. There are so many other positive things that happened this week, and so many other stories of regular, everyday people who are actively resisting that never make the news at all. I kind of actually wonder if I want to make a regular segment talking about the good things that are happening to counter all of the negative stories that are overwhelming us. I know that negative news, doomer news, catastrophic news really gets the views. I know that there is an incentive for creators to talk about all of that stuff. But it's not good for us psychologically. It's not good for the resistance. We've got to honor the wins. And we have to make sure that they are elevated and amplified. Because Trump and this fascist regime, they're actively trying to suppress the ways that they are losing, and those ways are myriad. They are trying to make themselves seem stronger and more successful than they are. They're trying to make you despair and give up. So of course they're going to obscure the news of good things that are happening and the ways that they are losing, and they're losing like on a daily basis right now. So yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll make a more concerted effort to talk about all of the ways that the rule of law is holding, that democracy is holding, that the American people are standing up and meeting the moment and holding the line. If you've got stories to share, let me know, and I'll make sure that I talk about them.